Whenever you're ready.
Okay, is your phone in not disturb?
No.
She says whenever I'm ready.
Now it is. Now it is.
All right, very well.
Now we won't be disturbed. For sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hi, I'm the Fine.
And I'm the Water. And you're listening to A Cup of Tea.
A podcast about exploring life through each other's eyes.
Oh, sharing a cup of tea with you. Look at that, we nailed it.
I know. It's almost boring.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say the same thing. It's always funny when we mess it up.
Yeah.
So what are you drinking? I did see that you were drinking something weird. What is that?
Yeah. So, I am drinking a sort of, what's the name of that thing in English?
Who the fuck knows?
The orange powdery thingy.
Oh, the one that you said something about in one episode, and I was like, oh, this is disappointing because false advertisement?
What?
I don't know. One time you made a drink with like orange blossom something, and I was like, no, this just tastes like coconut milk. I've been scammed.
Well, it's not orange blossom. It's just curcuma.
Oh, turmeric.
That, I always forget the name in English. So yeah, it's turmeric and honey and coconut milk. So something along the lines of a turmeric latte, let's say. Let's call it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sounds like, there was this cafeteria that I went to one in Mexico City where they had, I think it was a turmeric latte, and I had it. And it was so weird. It had, obviously turmeric and lemon, orange, and honey, I want to say. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah.
I'm intrigued. It's not quite golden milk because it only has turmeric and honey, and like golden milk has, I don't know, cinnamon and pepper and more stuff. And ginger. And I do like making that, especially when I'm sick.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I don't know. Like, I felt like I wanted something warm and milky, but I didn't want to make chai or matcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. This was easy peasy.
Cover girl.
Not well, that's easy breezy. But
yeah,
sure.
I know.
So yeah, that is what I'm drinking today.
Nice.
How about you?
Well, you made for me the what?
Witch's brew.
Yeah.
From David
is that
Steele.
the name? I thought it was witchy watermelon something. Maybe I'm just reading it. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's
Maybe
just
it's witchy watermelon something.
glittery tea from David's.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, we've had that before.
Yes. So.
Now. So on today's episode, I think you teased it a little bit last week.
I did.
Because you mentioned that I brought it up, that I was listening to this podcast episode of Deep Dive with Ali Abdaal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is very interesting. And I tried pitching it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what I said about it?
That sounded very peachy. And I thought peaches.
Oh, yeah. Amazing.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I know. I tried to pitch it to you. Do you remember what I said that it was about?
How you pitched it?
Yes, exactly.
Maybe not that well. You said something about you were listening to this podcast and you were thinking, I think it's kind of what I said last episode, that the whole series of talking about sex and stuff, and you said this thing about how you found it interesting because it's this woman talking about a book she wrote, and you were saying there's stuff that you thought I might agree with, and then there were stuff that you might agree with more because you were like more left wing and I was more right wing about it or something. And then we decided to talk about it here.
Yes. Yeah. Something along the lines of that. Because I hadn't listened to the whole of it when I brought it up. So I thought maybe I said something about the first chapter where they're talking about marriage. I thought it was something like that. But anyway, the point is that I said it was interesting, and somehow I convinced you to listen to it.
Yeah.
And then you agreed that it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we decided to talk about it. So
I find it funny that you say you convinced me, like it was such a hard thing
No,
to do to
I'm
convince
being
me.
silly.
Um, I thought it was very interesting. Very, as the author of this book, what's her name? Louise something? We have our notes. We were taking notes.
Yes, at some
Doing the Louise Perry, and her book is called "The Case Against the Sexual Revolution," and it is very counterculture in that way. Um, and so yeah, there's things that I agree with, things that I was like, huh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other stuff that I was questioning, and so I thought of this in terms of, should we start this episode by questioning the validity of what she's saying? You know?
How so?
Because I was doing some very brief research on her. Like, who is she to be talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I just saw that she was a journalist
Mm-hmm.
and writer, is what Google said. I don't remember where she's a journalist. I don't know where she works. And then also in the episode, she mentioned something about having worked at like a call center of some kind. Not a call center, but like a help center for rape victims or abuse
I remember
victims or
her
something.
saying something.
So it's like, okay, I can see what her credentials are,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so to speak. And I found myself, and there's even this part of the book which she kind of talks about the reception of it, because I found myself being very questioning, very skeptical at first of what she was saying, and not in like, oh, you're lying kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
but more in a, how much of what you're seeing is true or not, or
how much of it applies in general.
Yeah, exactly. And then she says this in particular when talking about how you, like, people talk about general stuff, like generalizing, and then when you want to pick apart somebody's argument, you look for the exceptions to the case, because she talks a lot about average people, and like, oh, but this is an exception for this, and this is another exception for this, and so it doesn't apply, and blah blah blah. So yeah, that was like some of my initial thoughts about it. There's a point where she's talking about so her book is The Argument Against the Sexual Revolution, and she's talking of how her book became viral, is what I think you told me also to convince me. Because the chapter names were published on Twitter, and chaos ensued, and they were telling her, what is this? She's like radical.
Yeah, it was like something, from what I remember, it's like either some, like one side of the spectrum, I guess, of the people were like what is she talking about? Like very counterculture.
Yeah.
Which would be the left.
Mm-hmm.
And then the right would be like, this is so normal. Like, what are you talking about? Why is this a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I, like, you know? Because the first chapter saying something like, marriage is a serious matter, or something along the lines of that. No, sex. Sex is a serious matter.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So, yeah, it's either to the left is like, what? And to the right is like, well, yes, of course.
Yeah. So she talks with Ali Abdaal, is the one we listened to. And
we like him.
He starts by also, like, they go down the chapters. That's how their conversation goes. So they start with the whole this thing, which I would think is the most the one that, when I was writing down my notes, gave me the least amount of notes, because I was just thinking, obviously. And there was I was just telling to my roommate this part where she talks about that whole analogy with sex being like playing squash and consent, and and I understand the utility of using the squash analogy to understand consent, but then the thing is, what I was saying to my roommate and what I was saying to you, but I didn't finish telling you the story, was that yesterday on the bus there was a guy that I saw was at the corner of, there's the Starbucks by in like that the bus drives by in one corner when you're getting to the dorms.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a guy there who was just like reading a magazine, sunbathing in swimming trunks,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And that was it. He was barefoot, he was topless, he was just wearing the swim trunks. And I was like, I mean, I understand that it's like a northern countries thing where they don't get that much sunlight. So whenever you
The sun's
see,
out.
yeah, everybody runs out in swimsuits and stuff. But at the same time, I thought, if this was a woman, nobody would bat an eye. But if it's a guy, then it could be creepy because it's just one guy alone, you know?
Interesting.
That was like a thought that came up to my head. And so I was telling that to my roommate, and I said, and it kind of I feel it falls along the lines of some of the stuff she says in the book of how unequal in this paradoxically, like in this search for equity and equality and in sex and relationships, we're not taking into consideration the differences that men and women have because of how they're socialized, and also because of the her evolutionary psychology aspect of it, which she talks about a lot. So I was thinking about it, and I said, yes, I mean, of course I understand that sex needs to be taken seriously, and it's not like a squash thing, because the next thing that I said to my roommate was, she says, playing squash is okay. Like, if you're talking about having a match with your boss, and if they ask you to play, it's like, oh, sure, whatever. Like, it's a recreational fun thing that we can do. That's perfectly fine. But if your boss asks you if you want to have sex with him, then that crosses the line.
Yeah.
Which is like, duh. So, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, the thing is, okay, so I do think, like, I understand, of course, the duh aspect of it, but I also think, I don't know if this is something that she was saying in this chapter, but something that I really appreciated was the talk about consent as saying, like, consent is not enough, although I think that's a different chapter. But the part of how, because we are making sex so okay, so nonchalantly go ahead and have sex with people.
Yeah.
Then what I really liked was when she was saying that before, when it was like, oh, you must be a virgin until you get married. And even though girls and boys would go out on dates, or and even though some people would have sex before marriage,
yeah,
the given was that it was a no, and it was a hard limit, and it was less of an opportunity for negotiation, because the expectancy was that it wasn't going to happen. But then now it's kind of flipped to the point of, and like, I really like this, of how now it's almost a given, and we as women, we kind of have to argue against it instead of, I don't know, I just don't like that there is this, because now it feels like it's a given, like the normal thing is to have sex, to want to have sex, and to be liberated and free with your sexuality, and hop around.
Yeah.
Then if someone doesn't want to, it's this very uncomfortable thing of pushing against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of really like for that to be put on the table and discussed. Yeah, because I also like when she says, well, I keep going to the consent is not enough, but maybe we'll get there. But yeah, just that part of how the whole sex thing, I really appreciate it. Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I guess I feel like it kind of happened to me where in middle school, I wanted to be cool. And what was cool was to like hang out with guys and like have a boyfriend. And like me and my group of friends would always have boyfriends that were friends. And like it was a thing, and we would all go out together and things like that. So I think at some point I kind of took on this persona that was going to be super outgoing when it came to sexuality. And I don't know that I've always wanted to be that, but I sort of kind of made myself be it. You know, so like when she said it, when she put it on the table, it was kind of like refreshing. It was kind of like, you know?
Huh.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
What?
Because I never thought about like, I mean, in this difference of opinion that you said that we had in the beginning of you being more like more liberal about it and I'm being more conservative. Because I agree, like you have always been more liberal about it. I thought you were gonna. I don't know. I never thought that you'd say that. That you felt like forced in a way to embrace the liberal side of it.
Yeah, I think so. Like I think I've had to find my own way in it now, but I do think like as a young impressionable person, especially like around middle school, and the thing at some point she says something about like, oh yeah, teenagers being the way they are.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was some sort of rebelliousness, because of course, like we come from a still kind of conservative country.
Yeah.
And a conservative state in that country. So it was still like, of course, to society, it wasn't cool to fool around. But to my peers, that's what made you cool. But also at the same time, it didn't, because it was that double standard of you know, people calling you names because you would be friendly with guys. Yeah. You know? So it at some point, and this is one of my notes, and I don't know where in the conversation I got it from, but it applies through so much of it. Of like women just get the bad end of the bargain.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually like this part where she talks about how instead of stigmatizing women for their decision based on sex, we should do it to men. Like we should stigmatize men for raping women or for being like whenever they make a bad comment about a woman, it should be like about them and not about the woman that they're criticizing. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess yeah, because and I found this very cool thing that she talks about at the beginning of how shame is a social tool for saying when something's wrong when there's no regulation for it. So yeah, like bringing shame to fuckboys essentially, or to anybody that puts the like sort of the extreme version is victim blaming, but when you're like broaching that side of judging that person, like the powerless person in the equation, I think yeah, shame should go to the other side.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know what you're.
Yeah. So maybe we are trying to do that.
Yeah.
You know? But like I just remember this other thing of with the evolutionary psychology that I really liked. I really appreciated it. Because I never thought about it. In this idea of, because she explains how in evolutionary psychology there's this, okay, so I guess because at some point I had the question myself of like, where does the difference come from between men and women? Like, why are men this way and why are women this way? And then she said something about how, because women evolutionary are the ones that get pregnant and that have a baby.
Oh yeah.
That was so cool. That's why they would be more picky about who they choose to be with, you know, because I think even like, I don't know, watching some sort of documentary on National Geographic or something like that, and like looking at how it's always the male that comes up to the woman to try to to the female to try to convince her to mate with them.
Yeah.
Like, why is it that way?
Yeah.
And like it kind of clicked. It was like, oh, because she's the one that gets pregnant. She's the one that has to then have a baby and raise it and everything, right? And then males, it's just like their goal in life is to spread their seed, to make sure that their DNA goes into the pool and continues their line, whatever. So then it would make more sense, that like men would be this way and try to get with as many female as they can, but females wouldn't. And I feel like, again, in my own experience, I kind of needed to make sense of it that way to reaffirm that it's okay to not be this super liberal persona that I kind of made myself be.
Yeah. I feel like that sort of also made sense in my brain when I think I did tell you about this, of how in college I had this philosophy class with a very cool teacher, and there came a point where we were watching, I think he had us watch the Gattaca movie or something like that, and the whole thing was talking about how we've come to a point in we've come to a point in social and technological developments and medical stuff, and economics, that you can, as a woman, now choose what you do, right? You can choose if you work or not, and you can choose if you want to reproduce or not, and that choice means that we're not just mating, you know. And when he said it, I was like, of course, it makes perfect sense. I don't just want to have a baby, like
that is not my only goal in life.
Exactly. And then it was like, not just by me, but by a group of my friends and other people that I know in school, like taken to like a next level where, since I don't have to reproduce, then I don't want to do it ever. Like I'm never gonna have children. But then there's also this thing that I think you and I have talked about it at some point, and other of my friends and I have talked about it, of like, even though there's this script that we have of like, you don't need to have children, maybe you don't even want to, and that's okay that you don't want to. There's like, do I really not want to?
Yes, I do think we've talked about that. So. Yeah, I found that very interesting, to the point of how with the liberal speech, because it's the new cool, we want to be that cool, I feel like it's a little bit of that. I look back at my middle school years, which were the equivalent of high school, in that whole party and boys and sex. Not quite sex, because I wouldn't say that a lot of my friends were having sex in middle school. That's not true. But the vibe of it, and like like maybe not sex all the way, but sexual stuff, sexual things. And I appreciate that we were kind of rebelling against previous generations being like, oh, no, you must be chaste and virginal and marriage and like whatever. And being like, no, like I don't want to feel ashamed of sexual behavior or whatever. Not that we had that kind of mentality at the moment. But yeah, I appreciate where our sexual revolution is coming from. But I also now see what she's saying, and how it's kind of flipped to once again give us the bad end of the bargain.
Well, I do see the bad end of the bargain thing in stuff like how, like in an interesting way. because I was in an all-girls middle school, so that was not at all the case for me.
Well, then that explains.
But I did hear a lot of times when girls would be bragging about having sex, and if you think about it, it's really fucked up because you're talking about girls that are like 13, 14, 15 at the oldest. But it was not like. There was a moment where one of the girls in my class, when we were in second grade, which, I mean, the equivalent would be like, what, 8th grade? In like American school, I guess Canadian too. And she was pregnant in 8th grade. And it's like, what the fuck?
That is very what the fuck.
And there would be times, there was another conversation that I heard of a girl who was bragging about giving a blowjob to her boyfriend who was, at the time, I think, I don't know, at least 18. Or 20. So it's like a 20-year-old guy with a 14-year-old girl. Are you kidding me? Like, that is really fucked up. And then there's this like, oh, but it's a really cool thing way of looking at it when it's like, is it really?
See, that's my point. That's why I really appreciated her saying that.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that. See, that's what I mean. Like, I can see some stuff, but then there's others that are like, I don't see my friends being the kind of people like, we were talking about Sex and the City in the past couple of episodes. I don't see any of my acquaintances or friends being like that. Like super, oh, I'm dating a new guy every week, and like the however many dates before sex rule, or stuff like that.
Yeah,
it feels very, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's antiquated because it's an old show, but even with newer stuff, when that is sort of the like Grey's Anatomy, for example, which is all about everybody sleeping with each other, and I know that exists in certain groups of friends, I don't know, where they've all kind of been with each other and they're still friends. I mean, I've heard of that.
Interesting.
But it also feels very detached, like very far from my reality, where most of my friends or the girls and women that I know are more like seriously dating, or if they're dating more casually.
I kind of do think that our culture, where we come from, is not very casual dating. It's very like, I like you, you like me, we're boyfriend, girlfriend, and we're going out.
Yeah. And even for example, with the people that I've met in Europe, where there is a little bit more of a more liberal approach to it, it's more that same thing happens where people, I mean, for example, this is the stuff that I learned from people who told me that in Sweden, where the way that they go about dating is that people usually have sex in the first few dates, like the first time they meet, and then if they get along well, then they go for coffee, like they have fika. So that's how then they start dating in a more casual way. It's not the same style of dating that we see in the movies that we're kind of used to from the media, where it's like, oh, would you like to go on a date with me? And then they go on a date, and then they may or may not have sex. And it's more of like the other way around, kind of.
They have sex first.
Yeah. Many times. Not always. It's not a rule, but it's like a thing. Because especially, I mean, at least in college, and going out to parties every weekend or every week, then you meet somebody at a party, it is highly likely that you're going to go out and, I mean, you're going to leave the party with that person and have sex with them. And if you like them, well, then you see them again at another party, and then maybe you go have fika with them afterwards, But there's also the other way of like, you actually just are friends with someone and then you start flirting because you like them and then you become a couple. Like,
okay.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking there's like different ways to go about it. And I know that we're on like that middle class level that she talks about of being sort of, I like this thing that she said of having, oh my god, what was the thing? Like, there's no, oh my god, I wrote it down. I because she's talking about having elite thoughts, like elite, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Luxury beliefs. She's talking about luxury beliefs and how you can seem really cool when you're in college or university or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, like sex work is work, and offer, like, yeah, sure, have sex whenever you want, and consent, and blah blah blah. We're in this position, of course, like, we can talk about whatever, like, in our experiences in middle school or high school or college or but then the reality of the, I don't know, another huge chunk of the population of the world has a very different reality where the sexual I mean, I cannot even begin to talk about it. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Truly, what it is even like. But from my sort of glimpse at, let's say, that lower half, which was in middle school, of like being in a public school in Mexico, and now I know of that generation of girls that was with me, that at least it was a group. I think we were a group of 30. And within middle school to high school that I know of, at least 4 got pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And out of those, those 4, that is like what, more than 10%? Which is freaking high.
I don't think anyone from my generation got pregnant in middle school.
See? Very different realities. And then out of those 4, I know that at least
Híjole.
at least 10, I feel like, from my class were having sex with guys that were at least 18 or older. So what sexual revolution? Well, like, what the fuck is that about? So is the sexual revolution being like, oh, look at me, I'm so cool because a 27-year-old guy when I'm 14 is having sex with me? Like,
that's
what?
That's the bad thing about it. That's what she's saying.
I know. That's what I'm agreeing with that.
Yeah, exactly. We are agreeing with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, it gave me some stuff to think about and some stuff to be skeptical about and be like, really? But yeah.
There was this thing about how there were 2 modes to men, and there is a casual partner threshold.
I also made a note about that, and because I found it very interesting.
Yeah, me too.
And I was like, I can see that. I can actually see that in my experiences, in the guys that I know, and in the, like, guys that I've gone out with that have that mentality of, like, one of my friends told me this thing of, see, for example, I don't see you going out with that guy. You're like wife material. Why would you go out with that douchebag? And I was like, thank you. I guess. I don't know how to take this because, like, yeah. What were your notes?
Just I thought it was interesting, I guess, of how to put it that way with a threshold. So what I'm trying to remember is that so she's saying that men have this, like, casual dating threshold, and then is it an intimacy thing? Is it a thing about when are they ready to cross that threshold into serious dating? Because apparently, from what I can remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, so to girls, there's only there's no real, like, there's only one thing where, like, we're going out because I'm trying to see if you will be my partner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then for guys, there's 2 modes. There's the I'll sleep with anything that moves.
Basically,
And somehow, somewhere, there's the crossing of the threshold into, oh no, I can see myself settling down with this person.
Yeah. I don't know if she explains it. I don't think she does. But
Maybe in the book.
She just mentions this sort of flipping the mentality switch in guys where, yeah, like, I don't want to overly just repeat what you were saying, because I do remember this thing of now, because of this just like single mentality that women have apparently, then it's like a requirement that you go through that phase of just casual relationships or just one night stands or whatever, and then you move on to more mature men that actually know what they want, and now and that. And so there's that on the like women's side, I guess, and then on the men's side, I think what she's saying is basically that they see women in two ways. They're either just like casual sex material or wife material. And I think it does have to do with when, in like wherever stage in their life they're in, on average, I guess, where they want to settle down. And they want to stop fucking around, and so now they're gonna go for a woman that's like the wife material kind, instead of the casual sex one, you know. And I did think it was interesting, and because my note was something along the lines of, there's a part where she's talking about how sex, like the non-committal extremes of sex in their, like when you're being 20 or 30, and you can afford to be having casual sex and just fucking around. But then she talks about men being 70, and you can't really picture a man being 70-year-old wanting to have sex with 20-year-olds, which does happen, right? But she's thinking like, yeah, that's a Hugh Hefner, yes. Of not so much the rest of the population, where if you see in your everyday life a 70-year-old guy with a 20-year-old girl because he just wants to keep having casual sex, as a 70-year-old man, a woman is a lot more likely to just say no to him because it's just gross. And like, what the fuck is wrong with your life? You know? Which that was interesting. And then in this same thought, like, of being gross, there's this, as a parenthesis, I think, there's this thing that I found so interesting, because she talks about how women tend to be more disgusted by stuff than men.
Yes.
And I was like, huh.
That is very interesting.
Is that like a nature versus nurture kind of thing? Are we socialized to be more easily disgusted than men are?
I think she's saying it's more of an evolutionary thing. More of a biological thing.
Yeah, because she takes it back to the whole thing of being more selective and all of that. But then, and then I thought of a real life example of, I don't know if I actually showed it to you, but in the group chat for the floor in the dorm, there's been a couple of times, more than a couple of times, when people are being so disgusting. And by people, I mean men who shave. Like the other day, I sent an angry text to the group chat, which I had never done because I was just done. You know, there's one thing that happens where the drain of the showers gets blocked by hair, but it's like, you can see that it's long hair, you know, like the kind of, you wash your hair and whatever, and hair falls down. Yes. And it's normally girls, which I understand. But then it's like all concentrated in the drain. Still disgusting, but less gross than what I found, which was somebody shaved their pubes and they just like the entire floor.
Do you think that was a guy?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it was so like, I don't know. I don't see a girl doing that, you know? And I can totally see a guy just being like, zoop, 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 like with an electric razor. Just, you know?
I mean, a girl would probably shaved it, not with an electrical razor.
Yeah, that's another thing. There's like, how, I guess. But anyway, so I texted the group and I was like, whoever the fuck is shaving their pubes, pick them up the fucking floor, people. Because it's disgusting. Like, the thing is, it was in those showers because they're community showers.
No.
I know. There's a corner where you have a couple of shelves to put your stuff, right? And the hair was there. It was like below it. So I
I'm
couldn't
feeling
put-
very disgusted right now. Please stop.
Okay, I'll stop. It was very gross. It was really gross.
Yes, very much so. That is disgusting. What is it with wet hair that is so disgusting?
I don't know. Oh, but the pubes were wet. They were dry.
Ugh!
Yeah.
Ew!
That was even worse. Like it was so far from the shower, which is where it was like,
Okay.
how even like
Okay. All of it is gross.
Yeah.
Yes, we are very disgusted by grossness.
Yeah, I think my threshold, my tolerance has gone up slightly because of the derm thing, but like, oh my god,
Very disgusting.
yeah. But
So yeah, I found the threshold thing very, because I feel like part of why I'm finding all of this very interesting is that I feel like it's an explanation that I hadn't
Needed?
had.
Uh-huh.
Of popularized, normalized behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like with the whole thing of like, why are women more picky? Why are males supposed to prove themselves to females?
Mm-hmm.
And like, since I didn't have an answer, or like when you don't have an answer, then it's kind of difficult, at least for me, to justify where I stand.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a lot like, because she's explaining all of these things in a way that, because of my experience, they make sense, then it gives me a better sort of grasp on where I want to put myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was gonna. Do you remember what? Oh my god! I wanted to talk about this. Okay. Do you remember when she's talking about how this idea of, I think Ali was explaining something that happened, of how the hotel booking response.
Oh right, yeah.
Right? And it's like, I don't remember, but a situation similar to this of like, a guy and a girl that are kind of seeing each other maybe, or that they like each other, something along the lines of that. And
I think it was a first date.
a first date?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe let's say that it was a first date.
Yeah.
And the guy booked a hotel. And then when Ali told that to male friends, it was like, oh, that's nice, just in case, whatever, maybe they'll get lucky.
Yeah.
So on and so forth. As opposite to when he told this to girls, it was like, how dare he? That's horrible, so disrespectful, that's disgusting, what is he thinking? I thought that was very interesting.
I thought the reactions were very interesting too. I wouldn't have thought it was disgusting. Like,
wouldn't you have thought that?
My reaction would be like, huh, interesting. He thinks very highly of himself. But not in a... Yeah, like I'm not grossed out by it,
Well, maybe not grossed out, but do you feel appalled by the guts of this guy?
No. I don't think I do. No.
Interesting.
Interesting. No, I don't, because, and that's kind of one of my notes too, of this thing of, there's times, again, my individual experience, where depending on the tone and the purpose of the date, like I can see how it'd be maybe more scandalous if you're talking about a coffee date, where we don't have that information because I don't think they say that, but if it's a coffee date and he went ahead and booked a hotel room for a coffee date, that was like, okay, yeah, that's very forward of you. Like, where in your brain does it compute that after a coffee date you're gonna have sex? Like, no. But if you're talking about more like a
club
dinner,
dancing.
club, maybe even movie, and then you want to go have sex, and you booked that hotel. It's like, I can see that happening. Like, I
think that the thing that I don't appreciate is the advance,
the audacity,
the booking of it, because I feel like it's very different if like the day's going well and you're kind of feeling the thing and there's flirting and some, I feel like then then if there's some like, oh, how about, there's a hotel around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
but the advance of the,
I mean, if anything, he was being stupid. He just wasted his money booking a like. I was thinking about it very practically, kind of in a way that I thought, okay,
which I think is what the guys thought.
Yeah,
and Ali was like,
yeah. Which is where like I can see that being practical. Like if you in this day and age where you mostly live with roommates or you share an apartment or whatever, and you want to have the certainty of whatever happens, you have this option that I can see that being a good thing to have, rather than, I guess maybe the difference is in interpreting the thing, like because guys are like, oh, nice, so like whatever happens you have this available, and then girls is like, oh, so he's assuming, so it's like more of a scandalous read of what the thing means, more than like it's not just saying the thing itself anymore, is that he dares assume that we're gonna have sex in the first day.
Well, what I would be more worried, not so much like the assumption, if it means like, oh, like he assumes that that we're gonna have sex, like I would be that easy or something along the lines of that. I would be more worried that because he booked a hotel and he has an expectation, he would be more pushy about it, or like he would have more of an agenda for it, rather than just a first date without really, like, of course, I guess I'm assuming in my female woman's bubble of existence that it's always an option for a guy. And I think at some point they talk about it, and there's this like social experiment of asking men like, oh, would you sleep with this random woman? And like, I don't know, I'm making it up, but a very high number, 90% are like, yeah. And then you go with a girl and you're like an average good looking person or whatever. Would you have sex with this man? And it's like, I don't know, 20% say
there's
yes.
something like she talks about that. I don't know if they actually did a study, but there were percentages like that where 90% of men would sleep with any woman, and only 10 or 20% of women would sleep with wait, no, I'm getting it wrong. Like, I don't know, 20 or 10% of women would sleep with almost any man.
Right.
Like it was the opposite.
Exactly.
And then the other thing that I was thinking about actually earlier was that whole thing that sort of extrapolates from that of dating apps and Tinder and that kind of thing, where she gave this incredible stat that I was like, what? Where apparently only 10% of men get about 90% of the women on the dating apps, specifically on Tinder, I think. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it makes sense, but that's like, holy shit. And I can see that in actual things that I've experienced, because I remember this one time when there's this guy that was really cute, and it was like, it was going to be a casual thing. And I could sort of sense that he was talking to at least some other girl at the same time that he was talking to me, because he was online, but he was not replying right away. So it was like that kind of thing where you're either just like still swiping or actually talking to one or two other people at the same time to see who bites, kind of. And then she goes on to talk more about like how the dating app works more towards those like, let's say, men in the higher percentile of attractiveness than for the other the rest of the 90%, in sort of like an opposite way. So it's like it'd be quote unquote really good for women because they could get a million likes, but it's very bad for men because only a few of them get likes. But it doesn't actually favor the women at all, because you're stuck with men that you don't actually like, which is something that as I was listening, I was like, I know.
Just
Totally.
like, it happens.
The thing is, yeah, because as I sort of, I was tired, like when I got here and I was telling you about it, I think one time that I downloaded Bumble for the millionth time. But the same thing happens where I download it and I start swiping and I talk to a couple of guys, but then I get tired of it because it doesn't go anywhere.
Mm.
And so in an attempt to do like the adult version of that, I think is how they sell it. I don't know, somebody told me, or I got an ad for it and I was like, man, I guess we'll see what it's about. The match thing, the match.com. And I think it actually says something like adults date better or better dating or like something regarding age. Like there's this like thought of older people are more serious. You know, this is not like here. You're not just looking for a one night stand or casual fling or whatever. This is like relationship material.
I see.
Is what they're saying. And what I've encountered is that, I mean, there's a paywall, which I have not paid for that. I'm not gonna, but I get so many likes of men that I would never like that I'm like, why? I don't want to. So it's just very disheartening. It's like not even in a way that it's supposed to be, I think, different from the Tinder or the Bumble model, but it doesn't really move away from it. It's just like an extension of it with disguised as a different thing. So I thought that thing was also very interesting, which I can see how that, you know, like in this sort of percentages thing, the power has sort of flipped from the men needing to court women and being like, here's why you should date me. Look at all the wonderful things that I can bring you. Now it's more like all these women that are fighting for the 10% of super attractive, successfully looking men. So it's like, yeah, I can see how that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another thought that I found interesting and also very, like, I heard her say it, and I was like, oh, every telenovela ever.
What?
Of how she's saying men are usually, like, very ambivalent about the social status of the women they're dating or something is what she said. But women will generally be trying to climb up the social ladder via a relationship. And it's like, yeah, I can totally see that too. So then you see that.
Was that also coming from like evolutionary psychology?
I'm not sure.
Or like the way that marriage was before the only way to move up?
I think it's a combination of both. I'm not sure how she says it. I'm just like, after talking about dating apps and stuff, she moves on to say this thing about, relationships as a way of social climbing for women more than for men.
I had this thought, and I wonder of how I believe, with my narrow experience,
you can fly,
that women will, in the same area of like women being more picky about who they're with, either evolutionarily because of the babies, or even if you don't want to have babies, like we're just kind of wired to be picky about who we are going to be. I wonder, like, because I do believe that we have that at some point when we're in a relationship, in a serious relationship, we have this thought of like, okay, like, yes, I like them or I love them, but do I want, like, is this the person that I want to be my partner? Do
you want to have his babies?
in a very like, well, in a very, I guess, yeah, along the lines of the evolutionary psychology thing of like, can I rely on them? Can yeah, that kind of thing. I wonder if men think
about it that way.
Yeah, or like
is it can I rely on her kind of way?
Maybe not necessarily in a can I rely, although I guess, but just like, do they have this moment of thinking? Because in my self-explanation coming from the female perspective, where I don't really know what goes on in men's heads. Is like, oh, there's the dating threshold thing, and then one day it kind of clicks for them magically or emotionally, or, you know, like the way they put it in like TV and media and stuff, where it's like, oh, we just woke up one day and I looked at her and the light from the window was just hitting right, like,
and it hit me.
You know? Yeah. Or I was listening to this song and I thought of her and it hit me. And that's the moment where they decide, like, oh, I want her.
I guess there's some truth to it, because it's such a common thing. There has to be some truth to it. Like, it's been repeated so many times that I don't know. Is there no there must, like, I don't know, but like, is there a stereotype? Is there a conscious criticizing, not criticizing, but evaluating of a person of your partner as a long term, like, thing?
When guys are going to choose to marry.
I don't know. We should ask our in-residence guy.
He's busy.
He is busy.
What's up?
Plus, I don't think he's gone to that. Well, but I don't know. You mean like asking from other experiences? Yes. From other people's? Can we interrupt you?
Yeah, what's up?
So we have a question about guys' thought process.
Okay.
About relationships and how there's a concept of, relationship/wife material versus just a casual thing. And how men tend to categorize women into like these two options of just a good time versus
wife material.
Okay.
And when there's, like that switch that gets flipped and like it hit them that they were dating the woman that they wanted to marry. Like, is that how is it that you presented the question? Like, is it a thing they think about in terms of when they start their relationship? Like, do you start a relationship with someone thinking that it's going to be a long term?
No. I mean more like when? Later. Like, you're already in a relationship. Okay. Yeah. So I think it comes from, like, as a female, or like talking about females, I think women have this real nitpicky moment of really putting on the table, like, oh, like, is kind of, and I don't know if this is going to sound bad to some people, but like, is he a good match? Is he going to, like, be there? Like, can I rely on this man as my partner on the long run? And I just wonder if guys have that kind of thought of, like, because it's kind of painted to us that it's just this magical moment of like, oh, it kind of hit me when I saw her
crossing the street.
Yeah. And it hit me that it was like, oh, this is the woman that I want to be with. Is there ever a moment of, like, is this as a person who I want to share my life with more so than, like, I love her? Does that make sense?
I think that happens, like, later after you've already dated her.
Yeah, for sure.
Right after you've already gotten to know her.
Yeah.
Of like, oh yeah, I really want to spend a lot of my life with this person, right? Obviously, I do think that, yeah, guys also have their different, like, parameters that they judge whether or not they want to be with someone. It's also depending on, like, the person's, like, wants. Because if I just want to fool around, then I'm not going to be looking so keenly on whether or not our personalities match. I'm just trying to get laid, But if I'm dating out there, some people will go into it thinking, oh yeah, she's gonna be my wife, baby. because they have a crush. And I know a lot of friends of mine that like put women on these pedestals and stuff before before they've even gotten to like actually
met and getting to know the girl in question.
Yeah, I used to be one. I used to be one of those guys. Shout out high school years. But yeah, I mean there is some judgment that goes along. Like I don't know if that answers the question. Like,
yeah, it's kind of along these lines.
It is a process in and of itself. Like at least if you're making that big decision. Like obviously I haven't gotten married yet. But just that big decision of like, well, do I want to spend more time with this person, right? Like for me, it was like, oh, do we respect each other? Is there trust? Can we talk, through the tough times without, yelling at each other? Does she get my sense of humor? Is she into the same kind of things that I am? Does she have a good head on her shoulders? Is she good looking? Right? Like all these things made me realize, but it was like months after we started dating that I sort of had that realization of like, oh yeah, all right, hell yeah, like this is the woman that I want to spend a lot of my life with, and it's a continuous decision that we're both making on the day to day, right? Of like, oh, do I want to still be dating this person or not, right? But I don't know how many guys out there come at it with this same mentality.
Yeah, like I'm wondering, because also we know a couple of guys that just don't really think about the person they're with.
No,
but I don't think it's a men or women type of thing. Like I'm sure, like the ability to be analytical and and give a little thought of who you're going to be with is not bound to whether or not you have a penis or a vagina, right? Like it's entirely up to the person and the individual and the way that they like were raised and the way that they think and the way that they look at the world, in my opinion, right? To say, oh, am I going to think and care about the person I'm going to be with, or is it just a woo flame kind of thing?
Interesting.
I do think that I like that specific part of like it's not tied to a penis or a vagina.
Yeah, you didn't like that.
Well, the thing is that I will say again, in this same framework that we're setting as like generalizing, like of course there's exceptions, but I do think as women, because of how we've been raised and socialized and how we've, again, like evolutionary psychology thing, I do think that there is that concern in our minds when it comes to choosing a partner, especially for life, like yes, for dating or whatever, but especially for life, of like, are they a good match? Like, are they a good? Yeah, I guess
insurance policy.
I guess it kind of comes from this like, well, they take care of me kind of thing as a female. Even though we want to be like strong, independent ladies, I still think there is something very rooted
in like, I still want a knight in shining armor, even though I say that I'm a strong, independent woman, kind of.
Yeah, like maybe not as princessy, maybe not as fantasy, but yeah, like that sort of moment of wondering, like not just like, oh, does he treat me well, or like, is this going somewhere, which is very media portrayed. But yeah, I just wonder if guys have that thought of, is she a good match for me?
Yeah, I mean,
more so than just like, oh, I love her.
No, I mean that's what dating is for, right? Like that's what your dates are for. Like, in my opinion, dates are kind of like job interviews, right? Where you have to like figure out, okay, is this person gonna work well with my work culture? Right? Like, do we have similar goals?
But I think that you're very conscious of those things.
Do we get all well? Right? No, yeah, I know, but like, I know a lot of people that are this way. I know a lot of people that are not this way. Right? I don't feel comfortable generalizing for all men out there, because obviously you'll have exceptions to whatever rule you're setting.
Yes,
Yes, it's
we've
been a theme.
established.
To answer your question whether or not guys think that way, yeah. That's what dating is for. Yeah, you go out, you see, oh, did you like her? Okay, was she funny? You know, did you guys get along well? Yeah, all right, well, let's see how it goes on the next date. And you get to learn a little bit more about this person as you go along. And as you're dating, you go like, oh yeah, you know, is this someone I want to keep hanging out with, or is she being a pain in the ass? Am I just not comfortable with her? Right? Like, you're constantly evaluating that.
I feel like there's a slight disconnect.
Did you want me to go like, oh yeah, you know, you just go like you're just attracted to her, so like, oh, it doesn't matter that she's mean to me, but
No. Because imagine a scenario where like she's great for you.
Mm-hmm.
She's great and it's so much fun and you have a great time together. But I feel like a girl will still have a oh yeah, this is great. But is it good for me in a will he take care of me way? And I feel like a lot of what you're saying is only of like, oh, as long as we're great and we treat each other right and like it's fun and we have fun and we enjoy each other and it's all lovey-dovey, then it keeps going. But there's no moment of
like future proofing.
I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean. Like, because you're in a relationship, and then you like, there's this like present sensation about it. Like, oh, everything's going well. I like this. But then there's also this thing of like, is it gonna be good in the future? Like, is this a guy that I would marry, that I would have children with? It's like, would I buy a house with him? And like a sort of. Yeah, ensuring that you're going to be okay later on. Even though, yeah, you might be very capable and very, like,
but you just want to know that woman, you can rely on that like, as a guy.
If anything happens to me, can I leave my children with this guy?
Yeah, things like that.
But yeah, I mean, you don't want your wife to be a psycho, you know? Like, but again, it's like there are girls out there that are 16 and pregnant, right? And didn't have the foresight to think about stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's a kid. Like, kid doesn't think of that.
Well, no, because, you know, still there's young women out there as well that already have kids, and maybe not necessarily with the person that they're going to live their entire life with, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So those lapses of judgment, again, they're not, I don't know that they're limited to one sex or the other, right? Like, I think both men and women have the capability to sort of stop for a second and be like, is this going to be good for me in the long haul? Mm-hmm. Or if it's or on the other side of the extreme, like, just fucking YOLO, maybe let's see what's what. Planned Parenthood, nah, thanks. You know, so when you're saying like, oh, you know, can I leave this guy with my kids? When as a guy you look at your partner and you're like, yeah, are my kids gonna have her temper kind of thing? Like you also like evaluate stuff like that.
Interesting.
I think that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, like,
that's what we were looking for.
Right. It is a thing.
Ah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Exactly.
I find it funny that we noticed the same. I think we noticed the same thing.
Well, the thing is like, oh, are the kids gonna have her temper?
Yeah. It's not like, can I trust her? It's more like, how are they going to be?
Yeah,
like,
well, I think...
How is it going to, like... It's not about safety. It's about...
how the day-to-day is going to be.
Yeah, like I mean, in a very, again, reproductive biology kind of way, I guess. It's like, how is my offspring going to turn out? Which, I mean, I guess it is like more of a... Yeah, no, I mean, definitely not safety. I'm trying to find the word.
I do think that for women, it would be safety.
Yeah.
Like, we want a reassurance
for
safety. But then what would it be for the guys?
ensure the
I
spreading
mean,
of the
you're talking to somebody who's not been married, who
No, I know, but you know,
has no intention of having kids.
I just
in the
mean, like,
future,
you know how you said, like, oh, are my kids gonna have her temper? Like, what is
Yeah.
the thing that a guy
the
would
thought
be
process,
worried
like,
about there? Because, you know, like, again, just in this scenario, I know there's the whole generalizing, whatever.
yeah,
But just for sake of argument. So the woman is concerned about her safety, and the thing that, like, relationship is going great, but she just wants some sort of reassurance that she will be taken care of. She will be safe with this person. This person will see what's that saying of, like, procure her, but
like,
like take care of.
yeah, of her well-being, whatever.
yeah.
Like, she'll be safe, right? So we've established that the
I mean,
thing
it
for
is-
girls to be safe.
Just now that you rephrased it in that way, it immediately my brain went to this very archaic sense of marriage, where it was like the husband, you're marrying the man for his money, for his protection,
Mhm.
safety, whatever, and he's marrying you so that he can have children and prolong the line of whatever family.
But I don't think that's what
You know,
he would say.
I know that's what, like, that's not what he's saying specifically, but it's more of a,
I think it'd be more about, like, what they would have to deal with.
you
You
think?
know? Well, because he said the temper thing.
Yeah.
So do you think, like, so what's the thing that a guy, or this hypothetical guy that we're talking about, would be wanting to ensure or want to get a reassurance of, that he won't be nagged?
Why don't you ask Bill Burr or somebody who's already had kids?
No, because it's not like exactly about having kids. It's more about the sort of underlying reasons, or like subconsciously or whatever, why you end up choosing a partner, and what the sort of intrinsic needs that you have. So, like, a woman needs to be safe, like, needs to feel safe, you know, so that's what she's looking for in a partner. So it's like the equivalent of that for a guy when you're talking about just dating, like, not thinking about whether you're gonna get married or whatever, but, like, thinking that, okay, so this is the partner that you want to have long term. What goes into that thought process of wanting them to be a long term? Because they mean, as, like, for a woman, that sort of guarantee, quote unquote, of safety and protection, and, like, all of that.
Like, I think the jerk answer would be, do I want more of this person in the world out there? Right?
See? That's exactly, that's kind of what it... No. That's
just from
yeah.
Yeah, my perspective, right? Like, the nicer way of saying it is, like, oh, is she the kind of person that I would want to have kids with? Right?
Yes. See, I think that answers the question.
It is about reproduction?
I think so.
What?
Again, very limited.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I just find it interesting that you would say that.
What do you mean?
Well, because again, you try to say that, like, oh, well, I don't know about kids, or, like, ask someone with kids, to, like, the point that I thought that you would come up with something that was not kids related. But then your answer again was, do I want more of this person in the world?
Yeah, so, like, let's say hypothetically that I was dating a Karen.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Oh, Jesus.
Do I want my kids to be half Karen out there, just, you know, have all of her flaws and whatnot? Like,
But are you saying that because we've talked about kids, or, like, is that just the joke, like, jokingly thought of a guy just with his girlfriend, just thinking, like, if we ever have kids, like, I don't want my kids to be like her.
Like, I'm picturing what Bill Burr would answer to this question, right? Like, with your typical guy.
Stereotypical,
Right?
yeah.
Me personally, I don't know, because I don't know that I want to have kids, or and then,
Right. That's what I mean. That's why, before, without kids in the picture,
Mhm.
because if our thing is safety.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying marriage now? You're I thought the question was more about but
Choosing a person, just choosing a person long term.
Mm.
Us, we have that sort of I would choose this person because they, quote unquote, guarantee safety.
Okay, in that case, because I thought it was more towards the kids,
No.
right? In terms of choosing a person, it's in my case, it's about can it be a safe space with her? Does she make me feel safe? Right?
But maybe it's an emotional safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the world's pretty crappy and there's a bunch of stuff going on, and you as a guy have to go out there, right? Traditionally speaking. So knowing that you can come home and there won't be any more, she's not gonna add on top.
Yeah, that also makes sense with the whole temper thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagining that, you're working 40 hours a week or sometimes even more, and then you have to come home and she's nagging and nagging and nagging. And it's
it's the nag.
Nah, thank you, right? But the fact that you're excited to come home and it feels like a home, right? And you feel safe and there's trust and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's more of a guy answer, if that makes sense.
It is. It does. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Very well. Thank you for your contribution.
Yes. We appreciate it.
Okay. Please don't yell at me in the comments.
Please don't yell at him in the comments.
I had several thoughts.
Okay.
As we processed his answer. For a moment, I was thinking of that thing I said at the beginning of my teacher being like, oh yeah, we're free and we don't need to have sex anymore to have kids, so we can do whatever we want and we're not tied by the evolutionary aspect of it. But then his answer, because, I mean, consciously or unconsciously, it was driving by the kids section, then I was like, I mean, maybe it's not, it's not this point of, I want to have kids right now, but it is there, so it's not as far away as we tend to think it is. That was one thing.
It is interesting.
That I was like, So as much as we say it, as much as it was like, I don't know, I'll think about it later. I don't know that I want to have kids. It's it's still in the back of your mind. And the other thing was, that emotional safety temper thing. Yeah, I found that was interesting. Of I don't know how much that has changed in time with whether men have always looked for that emotional safety in their relationship. Was that the case 50 years ago? Or
I kind of want to say that, at least, if we're thinking about the 50s couple, that it wasn't really on the radar.
Yeah.
Because emotional safety wasn't really on the radar.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm like.
So I think back then it was more about the kids.
Yeah. And there was this other thing.
And, and having a boy, and that's.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm lost. I'm losing it. This notion of, with the whole emotional thing, kind of how all his answer was built. It made me think of the again, exceptions and generalizing and all of that. But how the differences in socialization of men, and how you can have guys that are very much in this sort of marriage mentality since they're very young, or since the beginning period. They never have the fuckboy stage. And there's other guys that, again, as she says, the Hugh Hefners of the world, that are always fuckboys and they never lose that. Or they they quote unquote lose it because they get married, but they then still cheat on their wives, you know? So I'm like, where it's like, so again, if we could measure it, I wonder if somebody has. What percentage of the population would be guys that have that marriage mentality on already versus the others that are just like, I'm just like checking it out, seeing what's out there kind of thing. You know? I don't know. That was like a question that bubbled up. Yeah.
Interesting.
When I was listening to him. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, I am glad that we kind of got to that, like
bit of an answer.
Yeah. Of the safety. I don't know. Is it anti-culture still? I don't know. With the whole, like, I'm a strong, independent woman, but to still ask of a partner to make me as a woman feel safe. Not emotionally.
Yeah. The thing is, I actually caught myself thinking about this exact thing. I think yesterday or 2 days ago. Because I'm rewatching Bones as my background noise
nice
kind of thing now. And there's this thing that I find very appealing about it. Like, because if you just think about it, you know, like this is a procedural show where the story moves very slowly through the seasons. So it takes for them like 5 or 6 seasons, spoilers ahead, to get together. And there's one scene that I was watching yesterday where, like, why? Because there's this, like, will they, won't they sort of thing about it that keeps you going. And then what sort of, like, the bones they throw at you as the audience are these moments where they connect very deeply. And there's one of those that I was like, I'm catching this. Because Booth, is like going to the rescue. He tries to save her. And this thing where she goes in looking for the killer or whatever, and he's warned that she's in danger. And so he runs to her and he's like holding her and being like, everything's gonna be okay, don't worry. But it's like, oh, that's so sweet. And I was like, that is the moment. That's like the sweetness of the allure of the protective, handsome, strong man that's gonna come save me, even if I don't need saving because I'm a strong, independent woman. but like, it's always nice, you know, which is like, it always is. What is this evolutionary psychology?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, this whole, like, looking back at the whole of it, at the whole conversation about it, because a lot of it is very like, socialization or like evolutionary psychology and kind of rooted in our differences. But as we are heading towards maybe, or like in this era, we're trying, or like the culture is more going. So it's like in the past we were very binary, right? And now it's kind of like, you know, like a woman can be anything and a man can be anything, right? Like a woman can vote and work and be strong and independent, and a man can cry and can have feelings and can be a stay-at-home dad, right? So it's like we're trying to erase these differences. So what is the new culture? What is the new generation? What is the new thing? Like, are we, because I feel like us as a generation in between, or like that's going through the change, we're kind of stuck between this, evolutionary psychology, I want to be safe and taken care of
Mhm.
versus I'm a strong, independent woman now.
Well, I think from what I've seen, in like the news and stuff, there's apparently a trend with Gen Z kids where something that I read said was comparing the average amount of sex people were having in their 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and they were saying that Gen X had a lot more sex than millennials do, and
Really?
yeah.
Gen X? Well, I guess the 60s.
I no, but not even, because baby boomers were during the 60s. The Gen Xers are like our parents and people that are younger than our parents, but less than
Gen X had more
45,
sex
I
than
guess.
millennials?
Yeah.
I find that hard to believe.
So Gen X had more sex than millennials, and we are having more sex than Gen Z. Of course, there's a bunch of them that are still very baby.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Gen Z.
But Gen Z are being more waiting more until they have sex for the first time, which was another thing they were comparing, like the average age at which people had sex for the first time, and the youngest were Gen X, and then millennials, then Gen Z. Like they're waiting more and they're having less sex is the conclusion of the
really
analysis study thing. Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah. That's a thing, apparently.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that goes a little bit against what she's saying in the book.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, yeah, but I think she's not talking about this generation. Like, she's not talking about Gen Z in the book. I feel like she's talking about herself being a millennial. She's talking about millennials and how I feel like in the culture in which she grew up, and maybe the sort of lower class culture where maybe there isn't that huge of a gap between generations. And I think that's that was something that I was wondering the other day. Like, we see a big generational difference between, like Gen X and the millennials and Gen Z and boomers and stuff. But I think we're talking about mostly middle class people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very Americanized, right? So you can very clearly see it in the US, kind of in Mexico, in Canada, maybe in the rest of Latin America a little bit, in Europe as well a little bit, but I don't think it works the same way in Asia.
Yeah, no. I
or
wouldn't expect it to
India,
be
in African countries. So in that same way,
very westernized.
Yeah. So what she's saying, with the prostitution examples and the work is work luxury belief thing, she's like, oh yeah, like sexual work is work if you are a college student, but if you are a 15 to 20-year-old immigrant girl who is moving countries because there's no, you're a refugee or something, and you're gonna get trafficked, then, I mean, is sex work?
Oh, I like what she said about where, on the whole question whether to legalize it or not. And again, kind of I guess the leftist way of putting it is oh, work is work and let's make it legal so that it's, so that they have health benefits and things like that and blah, 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 blah. But then that kind of promotes it.
Yeah.
Which I think is very interesting. But what I liked is where she was saying that instead of legalizing it as a
criminalizing
the buyer, without penalizing the girl.
Yeah,
I thought that was
the Nordic model.
I guess that that maybe is a thing.
Yeah,
could be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was one part of it was I kind of wish I knew more about it to have a more informed opinion on it, but it does sound very realistic, like the way she's talking about it, and Yeah, like the Nordic, in that case, yeah, the Nordic approach would probably be the one that makes the most sense and is more beneficial to the people involved, I guess.
Yeah. I just feel like I get a little lost in the different speeches of of like what is kind of, yeah, if the now culturized thing is to be a little more liberal and like, oh, sex work is work,
Mhm.
or trying to defend people, because I don't think this is something that she says. I think this is something that I got from somewhere else,
Mhm.
of like very menial jobs, or very I think it was kind of like a sweatshop thing,
Mhm.
of like someone making a big fuss about sweatshops and being like, oh, this is horrible, and like we need to stop it, and so like it got stopped or whatever.
Mhm.
But then the actual people were like, who are you to come and change this, where it's like the only way that I can make money?
Mhm.
And it's like, no, but what are you talking about? Like we're fixing it. We save you. You shouldn't be doing this. This is horrible. This is,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
But it's like kind of like a savior complex.
Yeah, it was like, it kind of sounds like white savior type
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah. Which I wonder if then the left can be a little bit of that.
I think so. And I mean, I think this is like stepping away from what we've been saying a lot, but the thing is, I've noticed it a lot. And specifically, that fight that the Americans are in right now with like right wing and left wing politics being super extreme on both ends. Of course, there's crazier, I would say, people on the right with conspiracy theories and stuff, but the left is also not doing great because they have like this savior complex where they also take things too far without actually being thoughtful about the impact that their decisions are having. Kind of.
Which I think is a little bit of the example that she was giving with sex work.
Yeah. And it kind of reminded me of this. Again, it's a very extreme thing, but you know how J.K. Rowling apparently, I don't know how much really, but was canceled because of her comments about trans people and how she was opposed to like an open sort of approach to, oh yeah, sure, anybody can do whatever they want. And I remember very clearly that people were talking a lot about it. And then I went and actually read her essay that everybody was talking about. And because it happens that, it's like an echo chamber and people just keep repeating the same thing over and over again without actually going to the source. So I was reading the essay and her argument was that she's concerned for, again, a very low percentage, if you want, within the already very low percentage. Like, the amount of trans people in the world is a tiny percentage of humans, right? So within that tiny percentage of humans, also again very tiny, she's concerned of like men that pretend to be trans women because they are sexual predators essentially, and so now you're giving them a chance to be officially a trans woman when they aren't really, and so they pose a threat to children and to women because they have been known, apparently, according to what she said, I think, have attacked women and have attacked children. So it's like just a blanket sort of permission to go and do it because the government's not going to oppose it because it's too scared to scrutinize the people that are going to apply for it. So I was like, see, that actually makes sense. I would also be like concerned about it.
Yeah, but
even
I
though
think
it's like,
the problem
again,
there,
an exception and a very
exactly.
incendiary.
So like
and
you are
very,
kind of putting the majority, let's say, of the trans community through a
very
hardship
tiny,
because of the very small percentage of evil people.
Yeah.
Like, I get the concern, but then there has to be a different way of going about it where it doesn't by default punish or ignore the
Yeah.
rest
but,
of
but
the
like, see, that's kind of also what I guess extrapolating the whole like extreme white savior sort of thing,
Mhm,
and the opposite. Well, it's not a savior, but
exactly.
But yeah, see, I know what you.
Very interesting thoughts.
I know. Very long episode today. Well, you can't see us anymore because our camera died, but we will share another cup of tea with you
Next
week.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for sharing a cup of tea with us.
To watch more episodes of A Cup of Tea, click the link on the right. If you want to watch Pockets in the Universe, go to the playlist on the left.